Good good morning. This is Jason Dean, or I should say good afternoon. Got a little bit of a late start today. It's 1:10 on a Saturday. Pretty nice wintry day. I went this morning to there was a little sale in town at the glorious Opera House Video, which was cool. They had a little movie sale, mostly DVDs or all DVDs. So I went to that this morning. I was there for quite a while and got back a little bit ago. So, and just starts snowing again, and it's snowing a little bit right now. Definitely, puts you in a certain state of mind. I, and this month, of course, is Christmas. I am a huge fan of Christmas. I really get into Christmas usually, but I usually don't get into Christmas like I'm pretty bad. I'm a pretty bad procrastinator or wait too long. But like when it comes to, you know, shopping and all those kinds of things, I kind of wait too long. And typically what ends up happening for me around Christmas time is I get into the Christmas spirit really like the week of Christmas. It's kind of funny. It it doesn't hit me, and when it hits me, where I feel the Christmas kind of vibe, then it hits me pretty hard. Like I get way into it. I usually decorate, and all that kind of shit, and then I watch. I usually get into total Christmas movie mode, and then I watch like a whole week straight of just Christmas movies. I get totally into it. It hasn't hit yet, but it will. I'm starting to feel the vibe come on slowly. So, and of course, with the season and seasons, I always do a holiday show around. I typically always do a Thanksgiving show, always do of course, Halloween show, and I always do a Christmas show. So I'll definitely be doing that. That's a show I look forward to a lot. I get to talk about, well, movies, but then mostly movies tied to, you know, movies that I love, but then movies that are really tied to kind of my childhood. And with the Christmas season, there's a ton of movies. I mean, obviously Halloween. There's probably more for the seasonal movies, but really, and then otherwise, really any horror movie you could use that as a thing for it. But with Christmas, there's a ton of movies. I'm actually really excited. I'm going to go see Eyes Wide Shut. I think it's the 20th of December. They're going to be showing it at Waldo After Dark, which is fucking awesome that they're going to be doing that. And that to me is a Christmas movie, even though it's not. So, yeah, really really cool. And so with the snow, we got a pretty big snowstorm the other day. We had about 6 or 7 inches here. It was enough to where we had our first kind of snow day of the year, which was nice, because it was the first of the season. And, I don't really love the winter, but I do love the snow. I do love the snow. The cold gets to me after a while, but it is what it is. But I do like the seasonal aspect of it. Last year, I remember we ended up having a white Christmas, which was pretty spectacular. So we'll see what happens because we hadn't had. I can't remember when it was that we had a white Christmas. So with the snowy atmosphere that we got going on here, I've been seeing posts about this very subject, which is again a really cool thing to talk about. And I think I've done something similar. I had done a show that is related to it or to this topic, but today's show is going to be about snowy movies that movies that you can watch that put you in that world where the atmosphere, the snowy environment is such a big part of the movie. It's almost like a character, and it's a fun thing to think about because there's a ton of movies that are perfect for watching during the winter. I mean, a lot of these movies I'm going to talk about, I will, of course, always say they're great to watch anyway. But I just kind of wanted to do, I guess, my own show or take on wintry movies that I just think are kind of essential. They totally put you in that state of mind, that place. And again, I'm not going to necessarily rank the movies, but I think I do have top two, you know, or a close, or two movies that would be first and second, or two movies that would be tied for first, if that makes any sense. But there's quite a few movies. So one movie I can think of that is kind of a no brainer, but it's obviously obviously a very popular movie, but it's a movie that I need to see again because it's been so long, and it's such a masterpiece. But I think the Coen Brothers' Fargo is one of those movies that is just perfect for the winter season. I mean, it all takes place during a brutal winter storm, and then it takes place in a winter climate. Amazing film. I think when I think back, I think Fargo. I think that was the first. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Fargo with Steve Buscemi. I mean, that movie is such a masterpiece. I don't own that movie. I need to get an upgrade. I don't even own it on DVD. I think my parents own it, and I've borrowed it from them. But that movie is so fucking awesome. And I do believe that Fargo was my first Coen Brothers film that I ever got a chance to see. And it came up the other day, and again, I haven't seen it in a long time. I love that movie to death. To me, it's like it's such a funny and it's such a dark film, a violent film, and it's so funny. But I feel like every time I've watched that movie, it's always a comforting experience. It's like a comfort food. It's comfort food in the form of a movie for me. I don't know what it is. It's always been that way. Definitely essential if you want to watch a movie with a winter aesthetic, a winter atmosphere. And I think another movie that I think is um, one that, again, I didn't even think of it, even though I know, but I never really thought of it as being a movie that you could say is like a winter movie or a winter themed movie, you know? Um, and I heard about this the other day, or actually today. I'm like, you know what? That's a really cool angle. But I would say another movie, Empire Strikes Back from Star Wars, the second, which is, I think, hands down the best in the entire world of Star Wars. I think The Empire Strikes Back is a really good winter movie. I mean, it's got some really amazing wintry scenes, to say the least. And I never thought of that as being a winter movie, but it definitely is. So I would put that up on the list. And again, long history with that movie. Empire Strikes Back, easily the best thing in the Star Wars universe. Nothing comes close to that movie. Masterpiece. When I was a kid, very, very, very young kid, I did see Return of the Jedi in the theater. And and then circling back as a kid, that's what got me. I had seen the other two, The New Hope and Empire, before, but I did see the Return of the Jedi in the theater, and I will say that Return of the Jedi doesn't hold up as well. It doesn't. I've seen it a few times over the last couple of years, and it had been a while. But as a kid, I used to see it, watch it all the time. The first three movies were like constantly on for me, like on TV, on television, or we'd rent them on VHS. I mean, I was definitely an obsessed, like, became a pretty big Star Wars fan. I'm not so much now. I'm kind of tired of it all. I'm kind of just burnt out because I feel like everything else has been kind of a mess. Andor, I will say, is amazing. That is so good. But But I hadn't seen Return of the Jedi in years, and then I watched it a couple times fairly recently, and I'm like, it doesn't really hold up. I don't think that movie is as good as people say it is. I mean, it's nothing in comparison to Empire. It does have some really great things, but it's a lot more silly. It's a lot more silly than I remember it being as a kid, and it's just it's a little bit harder to take. I don't know what it is. It does have the biker scouts, which are super badass. But anyway, Empire Strikes Back I think is a really great winter themed movie. So um, there's also another movie that I just thought of that would be a good winter movie, which I remember being a really good movie. I haven't seen it in such a long time, and I'm curious to see if I would still like it now. But I remember it being a really good movie, and I think it was called Alive, and it was about based on a true story of a soccer team that crashes in the mountains, and they end up resorting to cannibalism to survive. The surviving uh, people who were on the plane, and it was a soccer team, I believe. It was based on a true story, and where they end up, turning to cannibals to survive, turning to cannibalism, and I think it was called Alive. But that was definitely a wintry movie. I haven't seen that in a very long time. Um, yeah, there's a lot of good winter movies, and I would say one of the best, if not the best. Again, this would be one of those movies that I think would be tied for first or second place, and that is Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan. That movie is a total fucking masterpiece. Sam Raimi again is a massive director, of course, because of the Evil Dead franchise, and he's done Spider-Man with the first two Spider-Man films, Tobey Maguire, that are incredible films. But and he's done a lot of great, a lot of good, really great films. But and he's most well known for Evil Dead franchise, of course. But he did a movie quite a few years ago called The Simple Plan with um, Billy Bob Thornton, um, Bill Paxton, and it's a it's a very dark movie. It's a drama, but it's a heist movie. It's kind of one of those films that like where these characters the story is essentially about this group of men come across this plane that has crashed in the woods, and they investigate on their and they find that there is a large cache of money, and so they decide to take the money for themselves, and it just gets really fucked up afterwards. And it's an amazing movie. It's so good. I think it's one of the best Sam Raimi films that's ever been made. It's one of my favorite films that Bill Paxton's ever been in. It's also one of my favorite Billy Bob Thornton movies. I don't really ever hear that movie talked about, and it is such a wintry movie. Like every aspect of it is shot in the woods or during a snowstorm. It's a beautiful, like the cinematography is amazing. It's such a good, uh, such a fucking amazing film. I never hear people really talk about it, but to me that's in some ways like the epitome of wintertime, because it's so you know it's all about that world. So good, so good. I can't recommend that movie enough. Another extraordinary movie. I put this right at the same level as A Simple Plan. A movie that I think is grossly underrated and I never hear it talked about. And also, this movie is such a wintry world that all the characters inhabit. It's pure winter. It's winter in all its glory, and that is Paul Schrader's Affliction, starring Nick Nolte, Sissy Spacek and Willem Dafoe. That movie is Affliction is amazing. That movie is just such a masterpiece. Again, a very very dark film. Nick Nolte is just absolutely incredible. Sissy Spacek, I mean, one of the greatest actresses ever. It is such a good movie. It's a drama, but it's very dark, and it gets into some pretty dark shit as the story progresses. It gets really fucked up too. But it's called Affliction, directed by Paul Schrader. Not a feel good film, but amazing, and it the whole backdrop is wintertime, and just amazing film. The film has Affliction has such a dynamic cast, and the writing is just exceptional. Yeah, it's just amazing. And so, but it has this really cool layered um, thing that happens when it comes. I really feel like it's a really great character study, and it's got this layered level of where all of these characters are pretty complex, and it's incredible. And Bruce Coburn is also in it, and he is plays Nick Nolte's father, and just an incredible movie. Absolutely stunning films. And I never hear Affliction ever be. I never hear it talked about, and it's one of my favorite Paul Schrader films. I'm a huge Paul Schrader fan. He's made so many great films. He's most probably well known for working with Martin Scorsese as a screenwriter. He wrote Taxi Driver, and he wrote, I believe, Raging Bull. I mean, he's a master director. He did another film with Greg Kinnear that I absolutely love as well, Autofocus, amazing film. He's an amazing director. He's still pretty prolific, and he's still kicking. And so, but Affliction, I would say, is probably his best movie he's ever done. Nothing has been. I mean, his other films are good, are really good, but nothing is. I feel like nothing has really reached that level of what he was able to achieve with Affliction, because I just think that is like such a high level film, and it's like a masterclass on how to make a good film. I mean, it's such a great winter film. I mean, it really is. It's such a it just it's one of those films where you actually feel the cool cold air, and it feels like you know like you're outside with no jacket or something. Like, it's just got that vibe. The other really cool thing about my experiences around seeing Affliction and also A Simple Plan, I saw both of those movies in the theater, and I saw them completely like cold. Like, I didn't know anything about them. I saw both of those movies when they came out, and there used to be. I was actually just talking about this old theater with Dennis Howard today. I was at Opera House Video, the owner of Opera House Video, and I was just talking about that. But there used to be this really amazing theater in Camden, Maine, called Bayview Cinema. It's long dead now, long gone. But it was essentially an art house film theater, and they would show a lot of really interesting, off the radar films like these movies that are not like definitely not commercial films. They're made by, I mean, Paul Schrader, obviously a very big name in the world of filmmaking, but he's not like maybe a household name like Spielberg or Christopher Nolan or something like that. Like, he definitely is an independent filmmaker, and he's always kind of maintained that. Most of his films are really kind of gritty and kind of dark. And Sam Raimi obviously has become a household name, but at that time, he had the cult status because of Evil Dead, and and he's done other films that are non-horror, oriented. And Simple Plan, even though it definitely has a lot of violence in that movie, it is essentially not a non-horror film. It does have elements of it, though. but there's no possession. There's no possessed zombies in it or anything. So it is quite a departure from his other films. But I saw both of those films at Baby Cinema, and I went into them totally unplanned. It was like a random thing. I went into them cold, didn't know anything about them, and I was just blown away by these movies. And to this day, I'm always amazed that no one talks about these movies. And on top of that, when I think of wintry movies, you really can't get any better than that, or than those two movies. Amazing films. I don't own. I think I have. I have Affliction on DVD. In a simple plan, I have on DVD, but I need to get an upgrade because, again, visually, the cinematography for those movies is absolutely breathtaking. Breathtaking. And these last, or I want, there's a few other movies I want to talk about, but these next two movies, um, that are definitely probably the most talked about films in this collection. And I know I'm probably going to leave something out, and then when I'm done with this video, I will be like, oh, wait, shit, I should have talked about this movie. But I'm trying to do it in a loose and informal way and kind of off the cuff. But obviously, The Shining, Stanley Kubrick. Pretty much, I've talked about The Shining many, many times. Pretty much, The Shining is like my favorite Kubrick film. Um, that's a movie I've seen so many freaking times. So, and again, winter is massive. I mean, that's almost an understatement, but is massive. Just such a the wintertime atmosphere is such a massive part of that movie. And again, I think The Shining is a movie that has gotten the praise that it deserves. I and I think it's one of the outside of it being a winter movie, and I think Kubrick's finest work, and Stanley Kubrick being my favorite director of all time. I think it's also one of the greatest horror movies ever made, and I think it's generally one of the creepiest and one of the scariest horror movies ever made, like legitimately. Because within horror, like my favorite genre, there are films that are great, atmospheric, entertaining, and scary. But then you have other films that are generally really scary, like legitimately to where you feel a little bit uneasy after you see it, and you want to maybe keep a light on when you go to bed. And The Shining is one of those movies. So, I mean, what else can be said about the masterpiece that it is? That's such an incredible film, and it's also one of those cases where I am not a fan of the Stephen King book, and I think it's one of those rare exceptions where I think it's probably better than, or it is better than the book, without a doubt, without a doubt. And again, The Shining is a movie that is talked about all the time, and it deserves all the praise that it's gotten. And that movie, like most of Kubrick's films, a lot of his films were not successful in the box office when they first came out, and I don't believe The Shining was very successful when it came out. And a lot of critics, kind of, you know, they didn't have a whole lot of good things to say about The Shining. And like most of his films, over time, and I mean, The Shining is a prime time example of that. Like over time, people came around to that movie, and now it's what legends are made of. So incredible. And then another movie, which again is probably the most talked about movie in the bunch as far as I've seen this movie and talked about a lot, and rightfully so because it's a masterpiece, and that is John Carpenter's The Thing. That movie overall, it's probably my favorite John Carpenter movie. I'm a massive, massive John Carpenter fan, massive fan of Kurt Russell. I think that movie is just so impeccably, masterfully done. And of course, the winter backdrop. Winter is such a massive part of that film. That you cannot. It doesn't get any better than that. One of the greatest films ever made. Probably my favorite Carpenter movie, and it's you know goes hand in hand with the winter climate. I mean, it's a no brainer. A masterpiece. And finally, the one, and again, I'm probably going to be leaving a movie, a few movies out, just because there are so many movies to talk about all the time. But one movie that I wanted to mention, which I thought really captured the winter atmosphere so much, and it's an incredible movie, and that is McCabe and Mrs. Miller. It was directed by the legendary director Robert Altman. It's a western, and it is an incredible movie. Robert Altman was one of the greatest, American directors, of course. So many great films. I think McCabe and Mrs. Miller is, one of my favorites, if not my favorite, Robert Altman film. And it's such a great western, and it's so great. It's got one of the best kind of like second and third acts that I've ever seen in a film, and it so encapsulates the winter scenery, and it's got some really great action in it too, and it's a really good western, really extraordinary movie, and I think it is a primetime example of a wintry movie. Really, really good movie. I don't really hear it ever talked about. So yeah, those are all the movies I can think of off the top of my head that I think are, if you want to have that experience of of a movie that puts you in a winter state of mind, these would definitely do the trick. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.